Here's your answer, okay? The #1 company is headed by a woman, Kraft Foods, Irene Rosenfeld, where she has 40% of board seats being female. And PepsiCo, 4 out of 13. At WellPoint, 6 out of 17, or 35%. Archer Daniels Midland, 33%. And Sunoco, 30%. They're not even the same industry. You can't even say they all, run retail companies. That's how come they have more. No. And clearly, I am very proud of this. There are only 13 women CEOs in the Fortune 500. These are 5 of them, okay? So when we think about what a tremendous progress we have made, think about those numbers. We may be the, half of managers or more than half in the United States, but when you look at the top, we are seriously absent. Only 13 women CEOs, only 16% of senior executive positions are held by women. In the top 10, the majority of the companies are US companies. I want to show you a slide. Next slide. Okay, these are the countries with the largest cluster of companies in the Fortune Global 200. And as you can see, the US ranks as #1 with 17.5%. In Fortune 500, just all the US companies, the 500 largest, it's 15.2%. These are the 61 largest US companies, so the percentage is higher. The pattern is the larger the company, the more likely they are to have more women directors in the US. So that pattern holds. Japan, we have seen progress. We are now at 2.3%, an increase of 1.6. Let me tell you, when we first released the report on Japan in 1998 in Tokyo, we were at 0.2% of director seats held by women in over 2,000 companies in 9 stock exchanges. So this is a big deal, all right? So if you were then to look at who are the countries that are experiencing large increases, you will see Netherlands, Switzerland, 7.3 increase, 6.7 increase, okay? And part of that reason has to do with the fact that Europe is now taking an aggressive, is undertaking aggressive measures in terms of adding more women to corporate boards. There is a quota tsunami that is sweeping all over Europe. And it began with Norway, because Norway mandated in 2003 that 40% of board seats must be held by women within a 2-year period. If companies do not comply, they would be dissolved. And as a result, no company was dissolved. They met their deadline, even though the company said there wasn't enough time. They found women directors who could qualify, even if people said there are not many women who are qualified. And they did it without disturbing the business undertakings of all of the companies. And because Norway did it, because they dispelled doubts that this remedy is doable, other European countries have followed suit. So, slide please. And as you can see, Spain followed in 2007. Again, 40% of board seats within an 8-year period must be female. Iceland most recently, again, 40%. In France, also 40%. It just passed the lower house. It is likely to pass in the Senate. And in the Netherlands, this is an interesting one. Their percentage is 30%. Passed the lower house and now up on the Senate. They are also mandating that 30% of senior executive positions must be female, okay? So when you look at countries with quotas for state-owned companies, those are government-owned companies, they're frequently airlines, utilities, rail, big companies. Israel in 1993 already had a quota. South Africa in 1996, Denmark, Finland, Ireland, Iceland, and they have all met or are beginning to meet their percentages. Germany doesn't have a federal quota, but look, Berlin and Nuremberg, municipalities have their own quotas, and these are for companies with municipal equity or companies with subsidiaries in those cities must have 40% of board seats held by women. In Quebec, provincial quota, 50%, and they're now at 40. And their quotas being proposed in Belgium and in Canada. So governments are mandating in Europe primarily, and because of that, their numbers will surpass that of the US and any other region very quickly. Now, will they all meet their quotas? Not necessarily, because none of them are as rigorous as Norway's legislation. However, because of the public attention and the media exposure of this whole issue, every time a bill is proposed, the numbers go up. France used to be stuck at 7% in 2007. Recently, we found out they are now at 16% in 3 years. US is at 15.2%, okay? And Catalyst has been tracking since 1995. So, what are the other ways the countries are changing? Stock exchanges. Australia's stock exchange and their corporate governance commissions, they're now requiring listed companies to report on the percentage of women on their boards, the percentage in senior management, and percentage of workers overall, and what are the goals of the companies, and to be reported in their annual reports. The same thing in Germany. Their corporate governance commissions has similar rules. So they're trying to get ahead of legislation. Underpinning all of this is the business case that was mentioned earlier by Barbara, and that is a study that was done. Actually, there were several studies on the business case for women on boards. And it wasn't just Catalyst or even McKinsey for European companies. Vietnam did a study, Turkey did a study, and the earliest one in 2001 was by Canada's Conference Board and also Pepperdine University in the United States. All of these studies, and there are a whole host of them, said the same thing. The higher the percentage of women on boards and in senior management, the better the financial performance. And they all have different measures for, return on equity, return on investment, and so on. So, but that, as compelling as it is academically, has not been bought necessarily by most corporations. It still remains sort of a business case that you have to re-articulate as eloquently as Barbara did earlier. Our clients are the women, the consumers are the women, therefore have women on senior management and corporate boards. It seems so clear, but it is not yet bought by corporate leaders. On the regulatory front, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has now added board diversity as a required disclosure for all U.S. listed companies, and it must be reported in their annual report. Recently, institutional shareholders like CalPERS, California Pension Fund, CalSTRS, California Teachers Funds, the union funds, they are now linking together to push corporate boards to have a larger shareholder voice in board nominations. In fact, CalPERS is creating its own pool of director nominees, so put your name in, for the companies in which they have holdings. They own millions of shares in many major companies, not only in the US, but globally. So their pressure is actually going to, in my view, create lasting change. It is my belief, and I'm sure many of you in this room share it, that transparency in board composition will lead to greater transparency in corporate governance. If there's anything that the recent economic crisis taught us, it is how much we didn't know. We didn't know about the risky financial products that were traded across borders. We didn't know who created or approved them. I actually heard somebody say that. We didn't know the contents of many of these products. So for many developed and developing economies, creating the structure for us to know not only what, but whom is critical to the economic vitality of every economy in the world. Thank you.